Hello and welcome back, fellow Nerfers, to the Nerfing Truth. Today we will be covering a simple mod that you can do for the Nerf Stryfe that makes it, in my opinion, tons better. So, for right now, we're going to show you basically what the mod does. Here's the unmodded one versus the modded one. So first we will be firing the unmodded stock form, and then we will be showing you how the mod fires. Alright, so here is unmodded. There was 6 shots. And now here's the modded. As you can see, the blaster fires about 2 times faster now, just due to the fact that the trigger doesn't have as much tension to where you can pull it much faster, and there are no longer locks to hold up that trigger. Alright, so now on to the mod video. Alright, so what will we be needing for this mod? Well, that's very simple. A screwdriver. That is all you will absolutely need here. So, in the interest of time, I've already taken off the screws inside of the shell here. So all that is left to do is butterfly it open. Now, please keep in mind that the 2 screws that go here and here are actually a different size than the rest, so keep those separate. So let's go ahead and just kind of wiggle the shell off of itself. Alright, it looks like I still have a little bit of a screw still in there. Alright guys, here's a pro tip. Unscrew your screws all the way when you're trying to take the shell off. Alright, there. There we have it. Alright, so when you open up the actual blaster, you'll see quite a bit of wiring in here. Since this is not a voltage mod, we will not be touching any of that. If you do want a few tutorials on voltage and increasing it, there's quite a bit. The reason that I am not is because it can actually wind down your flywheels. Now, there are $2 to $4 flywheels that you can replace in here. They're actually RC motors, and they do make it go faster and further, but they are also significantly louder. So what we'll be needing to do as our first step is we need to go ahead and undo this, just so that we can release that off of the trigger itself. All you have to do is lift up and you can move it to the side for right now. We also need to undo the actual trigger with this screw here. So go ahead and unscrew that. And lift the trigger off. Alright, so now in order to undo the first lock, we're going to go ahead and take this little piece off here. There's 2 screws, one here and one here. Just always make sure to keep track of where you're placing these screws, just so that you can reassemble your blaster properly. I would not want you to open up your blaster and then reassemble it wrong. It's definitely a pain in the butt to do that. Alright, so now that we have that retaining plate off, what we are actually going for here I'm going to try and readjust the camera to give you a little better of a shot. What we're going to try and do is remove the mechanical lock that is right here. What that lock prevents you from doing is actually pulling the trigger when there isn't a magazine in. So it's absolutely not necessary to the basic function. So go ahead and take this piece off, set it to the side for just a second because we will be putting it back on to make sure that the electronic lock can still be pressed. The actual piece that you're going for is this knob right here. Simply remove it, spring and all, and that's done with. Now I always like to keep my parts just in case I need to put it back to stock form for whatever reason. That is up to you if you want to do. So when you're putting this orange piece back in, make sure that it is in front of the button. You can see when you push it, the button actually pushes down, and that's what allows your motor to rev. So now then, all we need to do here is put back on the little piece, which is going to go just like that with the little ridge facing up. Remember what screws they were, these little ones without the actual ring on the head. Simply screw those back on. I know that there's quite a bit of screwing in this video, but you know, I feel like we can put up with it just for that pun that I made there. Alright, so now we are almost done. That marks pretty much the halfway point. Now all we need to do is remove this cap here. Once again, we're going for a purely mechanical lock that prevents the trigger from being pulled unless if the motor is revved. So, one screw comes off and you're good. Take the retaining plate off. Now here's where a little bit of trickery comes into play, just because the electronic lock is set up in there. What you're going for, you can remove this, and then you've just got to undo this portion. Now, make sure that you line this back up, which is always a little bit tricky. Line it back up to where it's actually going to push the button when it goes in. So basically what I had to do is I had to take this off, remove this piece, which is now discarded, and then I had to lift up the electronic circuit here, put this back on, then put the electronic circuit back on. You can see that the button now pushes when the button is pushed. That's the important part. So now all we need to do, once again, simply set this back up. And screw it back on. So now that those two locks are removed, that's basically all you have to do. That's why I've even recommended this for parents to do and people who don't necessarily like to mod their blasters. It is a very simple process and, in my opinion, very much so worth it. So let's just go ahead and line back up the trigger. Trigger goes onto this ridge. Then we need one of our circle-headed screws. Yes, that's probably the technical term for it, so we're going with it. And try not to drop your screws in the blaster, like I just did. Just got to reassemble. Put the screw back in. Alright, and now we've just got to realign this, making sure that it actually goes back into this little holder here. Then you've just got to screw that back in. Once all of that is done, all we're going to do is screw the shell back on. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the video, and I'll restart it once the shell is back on. You just pop the shell back in, making sure that it aligns, and then you're going to screw all of your screws back in. Once again, noting that the tactical rail houses a little bit different of screws. Alright, see you in a couple of seconds, folks. Alright, congratulations guys. Now that your shell is back on and all the screws are in, you can now fire your blaster twice as fast. As you can see, a little bit of what we've done, you can now move the trigger without it being revved. Now, what I want you to watch out for with this is when you put a magazine in, don't just pull the trigger. You still have to rev it. If you just pull the trigger, your gun's going to jam. And then you've got to take the magazine out and clear the jam and mess with all that stuff. But none of the electric locks we actually touched. You can see those. Those are the buttons inside. It's a little metal housing with a black button. If you want, for instance, the one located up near the jam door, you can actually see the button stick out there. You can tape that up while you're in there, just so you can fire it with the jam door open or whatever you want to do at that point. There's also one for the magazine inside the actual magazine slot. You can tape that once again together and then just put the housing over it. And it'll hold for a while, but it's not necessarily a perfect solution. But that'll at least allow you to customize your blaster a little more. So as always, when you put your blaster back together, you want to make sure that it works. So test it. And there go all 6. And that took a little over a second as opposed to, 3 seconds almost. Alright. Thanks again for watching The Nerfing Truth. Please make sure to like and subscribe as it helps me out a great deal. And we'll see you next Tuesday for another video.